Hey, Journey's Crossing. I wanted to ask a question. How's your neighbor doing? Sorry, typically I would ask you about you, but today I'm asking about the people living around you. Scott here, and I read an article this week that highlighted a story in the Bible that talks about Jesus telling a story. It's found in the Bible in the book of Luke, chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. Here's a little bit of this story about Jesus telling a story. Here's what happens, starting in verse 25. Here's what it says. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law, he replied. How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this, and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? And at this point in the story, Jesus starts to tell a parable. And a parable is just a story with a point, a message. It's an illustration. And so he starts to tell this story, this really famous story that many of us have probably heard, the story of the Good Samaritan. And that story goes like this. A Jewish man was traveling, and in the middle of the road, he gets robbed, beat up, and left for dead. And some people pass by, and Jesus tells us about three. One's a priest, one's a Levite, which is basically a priest, and one's a Samaritan. Now, the priest and the Levite, they pass the guy by. Maybe they're just busy, they're Montgomery County people, and they're just on their way somewhere, so they've got no time to stop. But the Samaritan does stop. And Jewish people and Samaritan people in Jesus' day didn't like each other. So this would have stood out to Jesus' hearers across racial lines and religious lines. Jewish people and Samaritan people were not getting along. But the Samaritan is the hero of the story. Jesus makes the Samaritan the hero, and it's because of what he does. It's because he knows that passing this guy by, no matter what he believed, no matter his race or religion, was wrong. In fact, he bandaged him up, took him to an inn, and even covered the cost of his recovery. And he was the guy that Jesus said loved his neighbor well, not the priest, not the Levite, the Samaritan. And that started with the Samaritan noticing the man in the road's need. Now for us, I know it is really easy right now to just focus inward, to stay in your house and to do your own thing. Just look to your family and take care of them. And taking care of your family is great. But maybe there are people on your block. Maybe there are people in your cul-de-sac or in the Zoom meeting that you're going to later today that have some needs that God could employ you to meet. Maybe you could listen to somebody or pray for them or encourage them or share something with them. What it will take is intentionally looking for, and maybe in some cases intentionally creating opportunities to see people and notice their needs like the Samaritan did. So the challenge today is a simple one, and it's just this. Look around. Look around, and if you see needs around you, ask yourself this question. What impact would I have on these people if I tried to care for their needs like Jesus did, like he wanted to? That's a good question. And maybe the answer starts with another question. This question. Hey neighbor, how are you doing really? I hope you get to partner with God today to meet some needs for people that you know, like the Samaritan did. You really could. And it would be one of the best things you do all day. Hope you do. See you, Journey's Crossing.